Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, yesterday was Mother's Day. And you're probably wondering, okay, why is he talking about Mother's Day? Well, my mother, when we first came to Canada, my mother used to work really hard. She was making the minimum wage that was offered at that time, which I can't even remember what it was. She used to work at the Army Navy. My mother was the kind of mother that she'd go without to make sure that her children would have plenty to eat. And I'm sure that there's lots of Albertans out there right now that would probably do the same thing for their children. So it was a pleasure for me to honor my mother yesterday on Mother's Day, because she was the kind of woman that taught me that we need to fight as hard as we possibly can to make sure that life is fair for all Albertans. Now, I respect the intention of this motion to look into matters, to consult. But I would ask all the members in this House to go and consult with those mothers or those parents that are out there right now making minimum wage, trying to meet the budget. Now, I know that there's members who are saying, okay, well, if you increase the minimum wage to $15, well, it's going to take away. But that's not what we're seeing in other jurisdictions in North America. We're seeing that it is possible to meet that $15 minimum wage. To suggest that because here we have a higher social safety net, to me is not a good argument at all. Yes, we're going to provide health care. Yes, we're going to make sure that people have access to education. That's what's going to help them get a better job in the long run. But in the meantime, you have to make sure that you have a living wage so that you don't have families having to go to the food bank. That's a shame. That's an incredible shame that we have families in this province that are making a minimum wage and still can't make sure to put enough food on the table that they have to go to the food bank on top of that? Shame. No one who works a full-time job in Alberta should have to go to the food bank to feed themselves. And you know, many of the roughly 300,000 Albertans who earn less than $15 per hour are forced to do just that, go to the food bank. And this denies them the economic security that their employment should provide and the basic human dignity that many of us take for granted. When was the last time that you earned minimum wage? I remember earning minimum wage. I also remember being unemployed and having to do everything I could possibly do in order to put food on the table for my family. Luckily, I'm in a privileged position right now. And we, as privileged Albertans who sit in this House, cannot forget those Albertans who are struggling to make ends meet at the end of the month. We know that around 55% of those 300,000 people are one of the heads of their household and that their families count on that income to make ends meet. We know that over 60% of those 300,000 people are women, like my mother. And we know that over 35% of those 300,000 people have children. That means over 100,000 working parents who are trying to raise children on an extremely fixed budget. Albertans Alberta can do better for Albertans. And we have to make sure that we stick to our plan. Our government promised to make work fair by improving the income of those who work for minimum wage. And work should pay enough so that people can take care of their families. Our government ran on a promise to raise Alberta's minimum wage to $15 per hour. We have not strayed from that target. However, we fully recognize the current economic realities that we all have in taking a gradual approach in order to allow for economic recovery and to carefully consider all input regarding the process of achieving that goal. Now, our government has committed to consulting with all stakeholders to gain a wide range of perspectives as we continue to monitor business confidence and overall economic conditions. And after consulting, and after considering, after the Minister of Labour considers, and after consulting, we'll be communicating more about the plan about going forward and how we will be engaging with Albertans on the best way to reach a $15 per hour minimum wage. So in closing, Mr. Speaker, I respect where the member is coming from. But I believe that we waited far too long in order to make sure that work is fair here in Alberta and to make sure that people are earning a fair wage for the hours that they put in. You know, and yesterday being Mother's Day, again, I want to honor my mother and all the hard-working mothers out there that do so much for their children. Oh, the parents. I say the majority of them are mothers, single moms. But yes, there are also single dads, but the majority and the tendency is that they're single moms. And they work so hard. Some of them even work 2. Some of them even work 3 jobs. In my own constituency of Edmonton-Ellerslie, I've spoken to these people. You know, and you wonder why I'm so passionate about that, because I've actually looked in their eyes. And when they say to me, yeah, I don't earn enough, then something has to be done about that. And I'm proud that this government ran on a platform that included a $15 minimum wage, that said they're going to work hard to implement that, that at the same time that we're going to implement it, we're still consulting Albertans that are providing jobs for other Albertans. I know that we can reach this target, but it's going to take cooperation. It's going to take a willingness on behalf of everybody to make sure that we make Alberta the best place to live for all Albertans, including those people who are on a minimum wage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.